Hi, Robyn.
Hello, Carolyn. Thank you so much for having me today.
It's great. It's great to have you. Now, tell me, where are you standing?
I am standing in one of my favorite places in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, called Glenmore Park. It's actually on the Great Trail, or the Trans-Canada Trail, which is the trail that connects us coast to coast to coast across Canada. So here I can show you a little bit if you like.
Please do. Please do.
All right. There we go.
Wow.
So here's the reservoir, and on clear days you can get a really nice view of the mountains up there. It's a little bit windy, as you can probably hear.
It's always been windy in Alberta.
This is true. Yeah. So that's where we are today.
Excellent. Yeah. No, it's a beautiful spot, and that's on the Great Trail there, the North Glenmore Park.
It is. Yeah, it's part of the Great Trail. That the trail splits off in a couple of ways when it comes through Alberta and through Calgary. So yeah, luckily we have a lot of trail around where we are here in Calgary.
Yeah. It's a great project, the Great Trail. I'm really impressed with it.
It's been.
Sorry, carry on. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask then about what do you think then that is the benefit of nature on mental health and well-being?
I think they're very much interconnected. It's been interesting with the Great Trail, for example. They just conducted a survey late last year, and over 90% of Canadians use trails to improve their mental health and well-being. There's that strong interconnectivity between kind of our inner state and our outer state, you could say, when we look at nature. And the places, that we hold dear to us in and around our cities. Natural beauty, or the state of the trails and things that we kind of enjoy. The ways that we enjoy the outdoors are really the things that feed, I think, and maintain our mental health. And there's a lot of data now these days that talk about that strong linkage.
I mean, I've certainly seen during this pandemic period, I've been getting out and about a lot, and you see a lot of people, and that's great because we can there's enough space in Alberta to distance. It's not a problem.
Exactly. It's one of the safe kind of activities that we can still enjoy to do, right, in a social setting, but socially distanced, of course.
Exactly.
And so it's been a blessing to still have trails here in Canada.
Yeah. And have you noticed, I mean, I know you're on the committee of the council of the Great Trail, and you're the director for Alberta. Have you noticed greater use of the trail during this period? Have there been like maintenance issues, people littering, things like that?
Not littering, but definitely a huge spike in an increase of usage, right? With everyone not being able to travel, especially, a lot of people are using the opportunity just to explore their backyards. And trail usage is a huge part of that. So even from a daily basis, if an opportunity to get out, enjoy some fresh air, enjoy nature around you to help you recharge, rejuvenate, we've seen a huge kind of increase in the trail usage across Canada, particularly over the past year with the pandemic.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would attest to that. But can you tell us a bit about your work, Robyn, and how it's relevant to the theme of today?
Yeah, absolutely. So professionally, I do sustainability and climate change consulting, and a large part of what I do is around understanding how we can better value nature and incorporate it into business decisions. And this kind of intrinsic value that nature has, including things like helping us maintain our mental health, for example. These types of value are currently not included in the way that we make decisions about how we're using nature and the natural resources that we're blessed to have here in Canada and around the world. So from kind of a professional standpoint, that's kind of my interest around natural capital management and accounting, and really understanding and incorporating that value. And then again, I guess with the Trans-Canada Trail, as a director of the trail, and being part of this kind of cross-Canada project, it is largely about helping maintain connectivity across Canada, not only like in the physical sense, but having Canadians feel a part of something bigger than themselves, I think. And being part of that larger community also contributes to, someone's mental health and well-being. There was actually a campaign that was run called Blas to Oz over the winter, where we encourage Canadians to get out on the trail and share moments on the trail with us on social media to help shift those blah moments to ah moments, really with, being connected with nature and enjoying time outdoors.
That's great. I hadn't heard of that one. Blah to ah.
Yeah.
That's cool. And I know that you do a number of other things as well, but can you say about, what are the biggest challenges you've seen, particularly in youth during this pandemic period, and particularly about mental health?
Yeah, it's shocking, I think. So 2 of my sisters are actually family physicians, and they've just seen an increase in mental health challenges, especially among youth over the past number of years. They say, anxiety, depression are the biggest kind of challenges that young people are facing from a medical standpoint. And I think there's a lot that's fitting into that, but we're definitely seeing an increase in mental health challenges among youth.
Yeah. What do you think the things that I know there's a number of things, but what do you think the things are playing into that?
I think at the root of it, it's a feeling of loneliness, kind of disconnection, hopelessness, looking at kind of the state of our world, like the economic crisis coupled with the climate crisis, the ecological crisis, and the social crisis. All of these things that are coming to the surface now and that we're seeing the physical impacts of across our society or across our economies is impacting the youth, because at the end of the day, youth are the ones that are going to be most impacted by these crises and the decisions that we make today in order to, attempt to address them. But yet they feel probably the most powerless in the situation, knowing that the decisions that are being made aren't necessarily being made by them and are held, by people with a larger amount of power than they do. And so that disconnection from being able to really maybe change the system or engage with the system in a meaningful way, I think leaves them with a sense of hopelessness. And then that connection part, as much as we have like social media and all these, ways to engage and to connect, even in a time like this with the pandemic, when it's not possible to physically gather, it's a blessing. But on the other side of it, there is still something that's lacking in it. And I think that's also kind of at the root cause of some of these challenges.
That's a really good explanation of it. And it seems to me that there's lots of different policies in there that leaders would need to take decisions about. There's no magic bullets for this. But if you were looking at it from a nature point of view, what sort of decisions would you like elected leaders to take to preserve the environment?
I think the biggest thing I would say is probably looking for ways to kind of reach across the table and to collaborate, regardless of, the jurisdiction, your political position, even, what industry you're in. At the end of the day, these are all issues that are impacting everyone, no matter who you are, no matter where you're from. And so I think it's about time where we start to look for solutions in a collaborative way versus a competitive way. And that collaborative way really, I think, needs to include people that aren't normally included in the decision-making process. So it's about equality, it's about equity, it's about engaging young people, it's about engaging the people that these decisions are going to impact the most. So yeah, I would say break down the silos and start collaborating.
Yeah, excellent. As I mentioned at the beginning, the UK is the presidency of the COP26 conference in November this year. So looking at it from an international perspective, Robyn, what outcomes would you like to see from COP26 that are relevant to youth mental health and charity and climate change?
Mm-hmm. I would say one of the biggest things I would like to see is a larger focus maybe on nature conservation, restoration, and preservation. As we know, nature connects all of us, and it's the foundation essentially of our economy and of our well-being. And so I find, if there's more of a focus on actually restoring old growth forests, for example, to address climate change through nature-based solutions, let that be, a huge driver, and let us be ambitious in that space, not only reducing GHG emissions, but also, okay, what percentage of our land can we start conserving and restoring, and how can we be more ambitious in that space as well?
And also, I think that the prospect of jobs in these new technologies, these new areas, in nature-based solutions, these will create jobs, and those are exciting prospects for young people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's whole
Mm-hmm.
careers to be had in some of these new climate action related fields of technology, as you say, conservation and so on. So I think there's a lot of,
absolutely.
You talked about the need for hope, but I think there is a lot of hope if we work together to create these new opportunities for everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely going to be kind of this next generation is going to be about restoration, right? And so the jobs will naturally come with that, but it's about, I guess, creating the avenues and the mechanisms in order to enable that kind of change.
Yeah. And I imagine that, I mean, Indigenous communities have expertise in these areas. We need to learn from them.
Absolutely. Indigenous nations have been the stewards of this land from, time immemorial. So it only makes sense, and I feel like this is an opportunity now to kind of do it better, right? Like build back better, but build back better in the sense of putting those in leadership positions that have normally been excluded, I think, from these types of conversations. And that's largely, I think, needs to be led by the Indigenous communities.
I've really come to respect the 7th-generation thinking that Indigenous nations use. I mean, we think of it now in terms of trying to project sort of long-term thinking in our decision making, though we don't do enough of that, I think. But it's interesting to think that all along, Indigenous nations and other communities we see in Asian communities, that they have this 7th-generation thinking.
Totally. And I think that's what's the great thing about diverse thought, right? Is bringing in these different perspectives where your worldview and your perspective on systems change is different. And that's when you're going to have kind of the most fruitful and sustainable solutions, is when you bring that diverse thought to the table.
Yeah, no, exactly. And final thought, what does Build Back Better mean for you? I mean, we hear a lot about it, but what does it mean for you? What does it look like for you?
I think it starts with saying it goes back to the inclusion component, right? So Build Back Better, but with all of the people at the table, with all of the voices that need to be there at the table, and with and also lending power to those that are going to be impacted the most by the decisions that are being made. So first and foremost, I think that, and that includes kind of including Indigenous communities and giving them kind of the opportunity for leadership in this space, but also Black communities of color, and the people, that are going to be most impacted by these decisions that we're making around climate change and around nature conservation and restoration. So that would be kind of one part of it. And then kind of another part of it is obviously the innovation and the technology side of the house as well, where we're looking at how can we collaborate to develop and to scale up the technologies that we'll need in order to create a low carbon to no carbon or emissions economy. And what does that look like? And then maybe a third point just around, there are a lot of things that we could do differently, and the solutions that we're going to create need to be different and coming from a diverse kind of thought. But I think a large component of this is going to be also how we do it. So, you know, I think in my mind, it's equally as important what we do with how we do that. And when I say that, I'm talking really about what kind of leadership is needed to lead this Build Back Better campaign or this strategy. And I think that really comes down to, can we instill and lead these solutions from a place of ecocentric leadership versus our ego-centric leadership? So how do we shift this mindset from me to we, and really living and embodying that into whatever solutions we create, I think is addressing kind of that root issue or that root challenge that has created these systemic challenges that we're seeing in the first place. Whether that's the ecological crisis, the social crisis, or even the economic crisis, is this idea of, the idea that we're separate from one another and we're separate from nature, when in fact, we are part of nature and we need to live and create solutions from that space.
Yeah. Well, that's a fantastic way to end, Robyn. I mean, what a difference a letter makes, right? From ego to eco, or from me to we. I think that's a really salient point for us to conclude on. But thank you so much for going out to your favorite spot today and talking to me and contributing to our thinking on Mental Health Week this week.
Thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful.